By the time the last parent slammed their car door and drove off into the October dusk, she had $93 left in a cash box, a padlock in her pocket, and a letter on her desk that said the building would be seized at sunrise. And then a school bus with a blown radiator rolled into her parking lot like Providence itself had sent it. Only the people who climbed out looked exactly like the kind this town usually crossed the street to avoid. Welcome back to Acts of Kindness Stories, where real kindness writes the best stories. Marigold was the sort of town that kept its porch lights on. Not because it was fancy but because it remembered what neighborly meant. The problem was, decency doesn't pay overdue bills and memory doesn't stop the bulldozers. Lila Hartman stood alone in the entryway of Marigold Hall Community Center, staring at the bulletin board like it had personally betrayed her. Flyers hung there in their usual chaos. Yard sale for cancer bills, missing cat named Whiskers, youth basketball sign-up, food pantry hours. And right at the bottom, half covered by a curling strip of masking tape, was the notice that mattered most. Final lockout, 7 a.m. Lila was 36 and built like someone who'd carried too many boxes for too many years without asking for help. Her hair was tied back in a practical knot. Her face held a calm that fooled people until you looked into her eyes and saw the fatigue layered there like old paint on a wall nobody bothered to strip. She ran the community center as director, janitor, and unofficial town therapist, all rolled into one exhausted package. The place used to be a heartbeat. After-school tutoring, senior aerobics on Tuesdays, GD classes for folks ashamed they'd never finished, battered couches where kids who didn't want to go home could cool off and pretend they were just hanging out. But city funding got trimmed once, then trimmed again until trim became gone, and "we'll figure something out" became a polite way of saying goodbye. She looked at the worn wooden floor, the scuffed stage curtains that had seen 1,000 amateur performances, the chipped trophy case from the 1990s when the center's basketball team almost went to state. Then she opened the little metal cash box in her desk drawer. $93.16. Lila didn't cry. She hadn't cried in a long time. Crying made you feel better for 5 minutes, then you still had to stand up and do life again anyway. Her phone buzzed with a message from the city property manager. "Don't make this hard tomorrow. Keys on the desk by 7. Lila set the phone down carefully, like moving too fast might crack something inside her. She reached into the drawer and pulled out a ragged spiral notebook labeled "Each Good Days" in faded marker. On the first page, written in a teenager's careful handwriting, were 3 words. "You saved me." Lila swallowed hard and closed the notebook. She didn't have time for memories tonight. She had time for one thing: locking up with dignity. She turned off half the overhead lights. The building dimmed like it was already preparing to leave. And then, a sound rolled across the empty parking lot. Not thunder. Not a siren. Not the wind. A bus. It coughed like it was choking on its own exhaust, groaned like it was arguing with the road itself, and wheezed to a shuddering stop right in front of Marigold Hall's double doors. Lila stepped to the window. The side of the bus read in bold lettering, "Riverglen Academy, Performing Arts Tour." The accordion door folded open with a hydraulic hiss. And the first person down the steps wasn't some cheerful teacher in a cardigan holding a clipboard. It was a tall man in a black hoodie with a shaved head, tattoos crawling up his neck like vines, and a look on his face like he'd already been judged 100 times before he said one word. Behind him poured out a whole group, teenagers clutching instrument cases and duffel bags, moving with the exhausted shuffle of people who'd been traveling too long. A few adults followed, moving with the kind of alertness that comes from years of staying ready in public. The man looked up at the building, scanning it with careful eyes. Then he looked straight at Lila's window, like he knew she was watching. Lila didn't open the door right away. She wasn't scared exactly, she was cautious. Life had taught her the difference. She stepped outside anyway because Marigold Hall was still hers tonight, and she wasn't going to hide from strangers on her own front steps. She moved with steady posture and the kind of bravery that doesn't announce itself. The tattooed man approached first, hands visible, body language careful. "Ma'am," he said, voice low and respectful. "We need help." That sentence alone made Lila blink. Not because it was dramatic, because it was honest. "What happened?" she asked. "Our bus overheated about a mile back. Driver says the radiator's completely shot." He nodded toward a middle-aged man in a reflective vest who was already on his knees peering under the engine with a flashlight. "We're stuck here." Called for a tow, but the company said they can't get anyone out here for at least 3 hours. Maybe more. Lila glanced past him. She saw kids hugging their instrument cases like life preservers. A girl shivering in a thin jacket while pretending she wasn't cold. A boy trying to make another one laugh. Failing, then trying again anyway because that's what you do when everything else feels uncertain. "Where were you headed?" Lila asked. "Columbia City," the man said. "Student showcase. 3 schools performing. These kids have been practicing for months." Lila noticed his eyes. Tired. Proactive. Not reckless. "Who are you?" she asked. He hesitated half a beat. "My name's Grant Rowe. I'm their security." Security. That explained the stance, the scanning eyes, the posture that said I can't afford a mistake. A woman climbed down the bus steps behind him. Late 40s, wearing a bright scarf and moving with calm authority. She had the voice of somebody who'd coached teenagers through stage fright and bad auditions for 20 years. "I'm Margot Dillard," she said. "Choir director at River Glen. We're sorry to show up like this unannounced." Lila looked at the sky. It was getting late. The town was quiet. Most stores were closed and the nearest hotel was 15 miles up the highway. And Marigold Hall was about to be locked forever anyway. Her mind tried to argue, "You can't afford to be soft tonight. You've got your own crisis." Her heart answered, "They're stranded." Lila's gaze dropped to a small boy near the back of the group, maybe 12 years old, holding a violin case with both hands like it might sprout wings and fly away. He looked at the building's lit windows with the kind of hope kids never learn to hide properly. Lila made a choice. "Bring them inside," she said. "No one sleeps in a bus in my parking lot." Grant blinked like he hadn't expected kindness to arrive so quickly. "You sure?" he asked. Lila nodded once. "I'm sure. But rule number 1, respect the place." Grant put a hand over his chest like she'd offered him something priceless. "Yes, ma'am," he said quietly. Inside, the kids spilled into the lobby like a wave of relief. They were loud for about 30 seconds, backpacks hitting the floor, voices overlapping. Then they saw the worn stage, the faded banner that read "Community First," the quiet dignity of the old building, and their noise softened like they didn't want to disturb something sacred. Lila unlocked the multi-purpose room and flicked on the overhead lights. "Bathrooms are down that hall. Don't flush anything weird. The plumbing's older than half your parents." A few kids laughed nervously. Margot approached her quietly. "We can pay you something," she said. "For the space." Lila gave her a small, tired smile. "Honey, I don't even know if your school pays you what you're worth. Keep your money." Margot looked confused. "Then why are you helping us?" Lila didn't make a speech. She just said, "Because people get stuck sometimes. That's all." As the kids settled onto the floor and couches, a skinny teen with braces raised his hand like he was still in class. "Yes?" Lila asked. He pointed to the stage with wide eyes. "Is that real? Like, can we actually stand on it?" Lila stared at the stage for a long moment. Her throat tightened. Then she said, "You can stand on it. Just don't fall off. This stage has embarrassed enough people already." A few kids laughed, small, grateful laughter that shakes the fear loose. Grant leaned toward Lila. "You got any food here?" Lila opened the small kitchen cabinet and saw exactly what she knew would be there. Not much. A few dented cans of soup. 8 boxes of crackers. 1 big jar of peanut butter with about a quarter left. An unopened bag of rice from the last donation drive that never quite materialized. She turned back to the group. Alright, listen up. It's a mystery dinner kind of night. Nobody complains. Nobody starves. Everybody wins. A girl in the back whispered, "Is she funny?" Another whispered back, "She's tired funny." That's the best kind. Grant actually smiled. Lila noticed something else as she moved around the kitchen. When the kids finally settled with paper plates and mismatched snacks, Grant didn't sit down. He stayed standing near the door like a guard dog who hadn't been told it was safe yet. Lila nodded at him. "You can breathe too, you know." Grant's smile didn't last long. "It's my job to make sure they get home safe." Lila replied gently, "Then eat something. Because hungry heroes get cranky and cranky heroes make mistakes." Grant exhaled, almost laughed, then accepted a paper plate like it was a peace offering. Later that night, after the kids had finally quieted down and the building held the soft hum of people feeling safe enough to rest, Lila went to her office to find extra blankets she kept in the storage closet. Grant followed, not creeping, not suspicious, just careful. "You okay with us being here?" he asked from the doorway. Lila didn't lie to him. "I'm okay with you being safe tonight." "That's different." Grant's eyes narrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" Lila opened her desk drawer and paused. She hadn't planned to show anyone the notice. But the weight of secrecy was getting heavy and she was tired of lifting things alone. She set the final lockout letter on the desk between them. Grant read it slowly. "Tomorrow morning," he said quietly. Lila nodded. "Sunrise. Building goes back to the city. They'll sell it to some developer who'll turn it into luxury condos or a boutique gym that nobody in this town can afford." Grant looked around the small office, noticing the pictures on the wall for the first time. Kids holding certificates, seniors in a dance class wearing matching t-shirts, a photo of a small graduation group standing beside a homemade banner that read, "You did it." "You built all this?" he asked. "I kept it alive," Lila corrected. "It existed before me." Grant stared at the letter again like he wanted to fight it with his bare hands. "How much do you need?" Lila hesitated. He said it again, firmer. "How much do you need to stop this?" Lila gave him a tired smile. "More than you've got in your pocket, Grant. More than I've got in my whole life, probably." Grant's jaw clenched. "Tell me the number anyway." Lila sighed. $17,000. By morning." Grant leaned back against the wall like someone had hit him square in the chest. Then the door creaked open. Margot stepped inside, her bright scarf loosened now, her face softer without the weight of 20 teenagers watching her. "I knew something was wrong," she said to Lila. "Your eyes are the kind that say you've been holding your breath for months." Lila tried to wave it off. "Don't mother me, Margot. I'm fine." Margot smiled gently. "I'm a choir director. Mothering people is my favorite hobby." She looked down at the letter on the desk. Her lips pressed together in a thin line. Grant said, "We're stuck here tonight because of a busted radiator. She's stuck here because a town forgot what this place actually is." Margot's eyes flickered with something sharp. This town didn't forget. People just get distracted. And embarrassed when they can't help. And tired of feeling guilty. Lila's voice dropped. "Being tired doesn't excuse turning away." Margot nodded slowly. "No. It doesn't." Then Margot's gaze shifted to the corner of Lila's desk, landing on the worn spiral notebook labeled, "Good Days." Her breath caught. "Where did you get that?" she asked, voice strange. Lila blinked. "It's mine. Kids used to leave me notes." Margot stepped closer, eyes narrowing on the handwriting visible on the first page through the worn cover. "Lila." Margot's voice went quiet. "Did you ever mentor a teenager here? About 20 years ago? A girl who used to hide in the back hallway and read old play scripts she found in the storage room." Lila stared at her. "A lot of kids hid here back then." Margot swallowed hard. "A girl who wore the same jacket every day because it was the only one that covered the bruises." Lila cut her off fast, not because she was angry but because that name, that memory, carried history she'd buried on purpose. Don't, Lila whispered. Margot's eyes filled just a little. Lila, she said again, softer now. That girl was me. The air in the small office changed. Grant looked between them, confused and silent. Margot stepped closer to Lila's desk and placed one hand lightly on the notebook like it was something sacred. You don't remember me, Margot said, voice tight with emotion. But I remember you. You gave me a place to sit when my house wasn't safe. You told me I wasn't too much, or too dramatic like everyone else did. You helped me fill out the scholarship application that got me out of that town and into college. Lila's throat worked, but no sound came out. Margot whispered, You saved my life. Lila finally spoke, voice rough and low. I just kept you busy so you wouldn't have to go back to the wrong house too early. Margot nodded, eyes shining now. Sometimes that's exactly what saving looks like. Grant stared, visibly stunned. So you came here on this tour? Margot shook her head slowly. The bus broke down here. Completely random. She smiled through the tears threatening to spill. But maybe mercy has its own routes. Lila breathed out, shaky and unsteady. Margot, I don't need a thank you speech right now. I need $17,000 by sunrise, and speeches don't pay bills. Margot's face hardened, not with anger but with purpose. Then we're not sleeping tonight, she said. Grant blinked. What are you thinking? Margot turned to him. You still have that livestream equipment? The setup you use for recording performances. Grant's expression shifted, sharpening. Yeah. In the bus storage. Why? Margot pointed toward the stage outside the office door. Because the fastest way to wake up a town is to make them feel something real. Lila shook her head quickly. I'm not begging. I won't do that. Margot replied firmly. You're not begging. You're inviting people to remember what they've forgotten. Grant's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. And if people don't show up? Margot smiled, fierce and kind all at once. Then we sing anyway. For her. For this place. For every kid who ever needed a room that didn't ask questions before letting them in. Lila stared at them both. This choir director who had once been a terrified teenager. This tattooed security guard who looked like trouble but moved like quiet responsibility. Lila whispered, If you do this, you'll cause a scene. Grant said, Ma'am, we've been causing the wrong kind of scenes for years. Maybe it's time we caused a better one. They didn't announce it like a fundraiser with banners and fancy graphics. They announced it like a rescue mission. Grant set up his phone on a tripod at the edge of the stage, angled it for the best view, and taped a handwritten sign to the front door in thick black marker. One night only show. Free entry. Save our community center. A teenage boy with too much enthusiasm held up a second sign, proud as a carnival barker. Donations go to keep the lights on. Lila tried to protest. Margot ignored her with a gentle smile. Lila, Margot said, adjusting the old microphone stand on the stage, you gave me a stage when I was invisible. Let me give you one back when you're tired. The kids lined up behind the curtain. Some looked terrified. Some looked thrilled. Some looked like they'd never believed in themselves until this exact moment. Grant opened the front doors wide. At first nobody came. The parking lot stayed empty. The street stayed quiet. Lila's stomach sank like a stone. Then a woman walked in holding a to-go coffee cup like she'd only planned to stop for a second out of curiosity. She read the handwritten sign. She sat down in the third row. Then a man in a work jacket stepped inside, looked at the kids warming up on stage and whispered to no one in particular, My daughter used to take dance classes here. He sat down too. Then an older couple shuffled in, moving slowly. Then a whole family with 3 kids. Then a teenager who tried to act like he didn't care but took a seat in the back anyway. Word traveled the way it always does in a small town. Fast, emotional and slightly exaggerated. Within 40 minutes the hall was half full. By the time the first song started, Every seat was packed and people were standing along the back wall. Margot stood at the front of the stage, eyes bright with something that looked like hope and heartbreak mixed together. "Good evening, Marigold," she said into the microphone. "We're River Glen Academy Performing Arts. Tonight, we're unexpected guests in the only building that still feels like a neighbor instead of a transaction." Then she stepped back. The choir sang. Not perfect. Not polished like some televised performance with professional lighting and studio microphones. It was better than perfect. It was real. It was human. Lila stood in the back by the door, arms crossed like she could hold herself together through sheer stubbornness. But her eyes betrayed her. They kept shining, kept blinking too fast. Grant watched the crowd more than the stage. He saw shoulders loosen. He saw jaws unclench. He saw people pull out their phones, not to scroll through social media but to share the live stream with friends who couldn't be there. A teenage girl came up between songs and whispered to Lila, "Ma'am, my mom just texted me. She said she learned to read in this building back in 1998. Lila swallowed hard. "Then tell her she did real good." The girl smiled. "She did. But she's crying in the car right now anyway." During the final song, a slow, aching arrangement of an old hymn, something unexpected happened. The city property manager walked in. Zoot. Clipboard. That look people wear when they think rules and procedures make them more important than kindness. He stood at the very back, stiff and unimpressed. Lila's heart dropped into her stomach. She expected him to ruin everything, to pull some technicality and shut it all down. Grant stepped forward immediately, calm as stone. "You here to shut this down?" Grant asked quietly. The man frowned. "I'm here to observe." Grant nodded like he'd expected that answer. "Then observe this." The song ended. The room erupted in applause that felt less like politeness and more like relief. Like people had been holding their breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale. Margot stepped up to the microphone and held it gently like it was fragile. "If Marigold Hall helped you once," she said slowly, "or helped your child, or helped your neighbor when they had nowhere else to go, then tonight is your chance to help it back." Lila wanted to disappear into the floor. Margot pointed directly at her anyway. This woman kept the doors open when nobody was paying attention. She stayed late when kids needed somewhere safe to sit. She cleaned bathrooms and smiled at people like it didn't cost her anything. "Tomorrow morning at 7, the city locks this building permanently." A hush fell over the room. Margot's voice didn't waver. "We need $17,000 by sunrise to stop it." A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone from the middle rows shouted, "How much do we have so far?" Grant held up his phone screen showing the live donation tracker climbing in real time. 2,300, he called out. Then a voice from the front row, "I can do 500. Another voice, older and shaky, "I can do 50. A man in a Carhartt jacket stood up near the back. "I own Hale's Hardware on Pinewood Street. Put me down for 1,000. The property manager shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his clipboard like it might save him. Lila whispered desperately to Margot, "This is humiliating." Margot whispered back without looking at her, "No. This is what community looks like when it wakes up." Within 30 minutes, the donation number on Grant's phone reached 10,000. Then 12. Then 14. The front door opened one more time. A woman stepped inside wearing a simple navy coat, her hair tucked neatly behind her ears, holding a leather folder under one arm. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone used to making decisions that mattered. She walked straight to the front of the room and introduced herself. "My name is Elise Granger," she said clearly. "I'm a regional representative for the Marlowe Foundation." The room froze. Lila's knees went weak. Elise continued, "We fund after-school programs, literacy centers, and community hubs across the state. We were scheduled to visit Marigold next month for a site evaluation." She looked directly at Lila. "But I saw the live stream 30 minutes ago. And I don't wait a month for a town that still knows how to love its neighbors. She opened the leather folder and pulled out a single piece of paper. She held it up. $25,000. The room exploded. People jumped to their feet. Someone screamed. A kid near the stage started crying and didn't even try to hide it. Lila stared at the check like it was a hallucination, like if she blinked it would vanish into smoke. Elise smiled warmly. Keep the building. Keep the programs running. Expand if you can. And for the record. She turned slowly toward the property manager standing awkwardly by the back wall. If the city locks this place after tonight, I'll personally make sure every newspaper in the state asks why. The property manager's face tightened into something between embarrassment and fury. Grant leaned close to Lila and murmured, "Ma'am, I think the rulebook just lost." Lila's laugh broke out suddenly, half sob, half disbelief, entirely uncontrollable. "Grant," she whispered, voice shaking, "I don't even know you." Grant gave her the smallest, most honest smile. "People don't have to know you to show up for you," he said. "That's the whole point of this." The sun rose over Marigold the next morning like it always did. Quiet, steady, indifferent to the drama of human beings. At 6:45 a.m., Lila stood at her desk with the building keys in her hand, waiting for the city manager to arrive and demand she hand them over. Instead, the mayor came. Mayor Edwin Hale wasn't flashy. He was the type who wore the same winter coat for 10 years and still shook hands like it actually meant something. He'd been mayor for 6 years, and people mostly forgot he existed until election season. He stepped into Lila's office with the property manager trailing behind him, both of them looking stiff and formal. Mayor Hale looked at the donation receipts scattered across Lila's desk, the printed copy of the foundation check, the live stream screenshots people had printed out like they were historic documents. He cleared his throat. "Ms. Hartman," he said slowly, "I owe you an apology." Lila didn't gloat. She didn't lecture. She didn't even smile. She just held out the keys toward him. The mayor didn't take them. He pushed them gently back toward her across the desk. "We're renewing the building lease," he said. 5 years. And we're reinstating partial city funding for operations. The property manager looked like he'd swallowed a lemon whole. Mayor Hale continued, "Additionally, I'm requesting that you take on a new role, Director of Community Outreach Partnerships for the town. It's a paid position. With benefits." Lila stared at him. "Me?" Mayor Hale nodded. "You kept this town's heart beating while the rest of us were too distracted to notice. That's leadership, Ms. Hartman." Lila's voice shook. "I can't afford to mess this up." The mayor replied, "You already proved you won't quit when things get hard. That's rarer than you think." Outside in the parking lot, the River Glen Academy bus sat gleaming in the morning light, radiator repaired, engine humming. The kids were packing up their bags, hugging strangers like they'd known them their whole lives. Margot found Lila standing on the front steps, watching the morning unfold. "I didn't plan to come back here like this," Margot admitted quietly. "But I'm so glad the bus broke down." Lila's eyes softened. "You were the kid with the bruised backpack and the notebook full of song lyrics." Margot smiled through fresh tears. "Yeah. That was me." Lila pulled her into a tight, wordless hug. Grant watched from a respectful distance, arms crossed, pretending the morning sunlight was just making his eyes water. Lila waved him over. He approached carefully like he wasn't sure he belonged in this moment. "You did good last night," Lila told him. Grant shrugged. "Ma'am, I just pressed a button and held a phone. The town did the rest." Lila looked at him steadily. "No. You guarded those kids like they were made of gold. You stayed alert when everyone else was celebrating. You've got a decent heart, Grant Rowe." Grant's voice lowered. "I used to be the kind of guy towns didn't cheer for." Lila said simply, "Then let today be different." Grant smiled. Small, honest, real. "I'll take that," he said. Before the bus pulled out of the parking lot, The little boy with the violin case ran up to Lila and held something out to her. A ribbon. Not expensive. Just a cheap blue ribbon from a participation trophy in his backpack. For the stage, he said seriously. So it doesn't feel lonely when we leave. Lila knelt down to his eye level. You're a good kid. He nodded with complete confidence. I know. Lila laughed out loud. All right, Mr. Confidence. Get on the bus before your teacher leaves you behind. He ran off like he'd just been knighted by royalty. And when the bus finally drove away, disappearing down the road toward Columbia City and whatever came next, Marigold Hall stood behind Lila. Still standing, still lit, still alive. Not because some billionaire swooped in at the last second. Not because a miracle fell from the sky. Because kindness called the town back home. And people remembered how to answer. Kindness echoes. Sometimes it stays open late when everyone else has locked their doors. Sometimes it shares the last plate of food without counting the cost. Sometimes it turns a broken-down night into a better morning just by refusing to turn people away. If this story warmed something inside you, hit that like button so more hearts can find it. And if you believe the world still needs people who open doors before asking questions, subscribe and join this family right here. Turn on notifications so you don't miss out on any video like this, and share this channel with a loved one. Now I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever seen a community show up in a way that completely shocked you? Or have you ever been the one who showed up when nobody expected it? If you made it all the way to the end, type, keep the lights on. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next story.